What is going on, guys? Welcome to The Reformed Reader, the channel where we review different forms of media through the lens of a Christian who is under the authority of the Scriptures. And today we're going to be looking at Golden Sun by Pierce Brown. Now I'm going to do something a little bit different today, and I want to take you through my journey reading this from the first page up to the end. So let's dive into this, and I'll show you what my thoughts were as we're going, and we'll come back here and talk about what I thought at the end. So I just started Golden Sun, just read through, I think, the prologue, maybe the first chapter. I can't remember if I'm just through the prologue or the first chapter. Anyway, so there's a time jump, which is pretty cool. Not really what I thought was going to happen. I figured it'd pick right back up, but apparently 2 years has passed, and Darrow is in charge of his own fleet. There's a couple recurring characters. It's already starting off pretty quick paced. Yeah, interested to see where he takes Darrow and some of these side characters, see who maybe who pops back up, see what takes place here. So yeah, excited to see where this goes, and I'll see you guys in a minute. Okay, so it is the next day. I got in about an hour of reading last night. I got about 6 chapters in. So Darrow lost the competition. I didn't really see that coming. Not only did he lose, but then he got beaten, and now he is being disowned, and his contract is for sale, basically. So, yeah, pretty crazy little turn of events. I think I know where it's going, but I made that mistake in book 1. So, yeah, I'm just kind of along for the ride. So, I'm gonna get back and read a little bit more this evening, and I'll update you guys again. Probably here in just a minute. All right, see you guys. Okay, everybody. So I just finished the dinner party scene. What? Like, again, Pierce Brown is a master of subverting your expectations. I mean, this is just wild. I mean, somehow he keeps elevating the stakes. I have no idea how he does it, but he is a master. So if you haven't read this, I don't really know what I can say that's not going to spoil anything other than everything just went nuts. So I gotta see what happens. I'll be back in a minute. What is going on, guys? I am back for a reading update. I am about 65% into Golden Sun. I got quite a bit of reading done yesterday, so let's kind of talk about what's happened. The dinner party occurred. Darrow kind of drew a line in the sand. I think he's kind of stepping into the role that he knows he has to play, probably even more so than in book 1. So that's neat to see, sort of that inner conflict or inner turmoil that he's struggling with. Then I guess we would call it a coup occurred, and a lot of sort of political drama and plotting, scheming is going on. There was quite a bit of traitorous intent that was revealed from Octavia. Darrow was able to kind of, I guess I would say he completed a rescue mission, and him being shot out of the ship was awesome. Also, Severo is one of my favorite characters of all time. I think this book would not be as good without him. Same as in book 1. I also think that he really kind of opens up the world. He makes it seem way more realistic, and how there's nuance in characters, just like there's nuance in people. I mean, his character is just so cool. So then they get aboard the Pax. Again, I'm trying to keep things as spoiler-free as possible. I just figured maybe some of you would like to come along with me as I read this for the first time. Now there's a lot of sort of the political drama, plotting and scheming and subplotting between characters and alliances that are being made. Darrow met back up with Lorne and had to defend himself. Yeah, that whole scene took place, and so now he is really kind of stepping up to the plate to move some major pieces around into this war. So yeah, so far it's excellent. So I'm gonna do a little bit more reading tonight, and I'll be back in just a minute. Okay, we're back. All right, Golden Sun. Let's talk about this book. Now I'm going to try to keep this as spoiler free as possible, but this is book 2, so there's obviously going to be some mild spoilers in here. The way I normally do these reviews is I go over the good, the bad, and the ugly. So let's talk about the good. This book was awesome. I thought this was at least as good as the first book, which I gave a 10 out of 10, if not a little bit of a step up. And the reason I say that is because let's start with the characters. Obviously, we have some of the same characters like Darrow, Mustang, Severo. Those characters that we meet again in this book are just elevated. We don't have to dive into who these people are. So we got that in book 1. And so this is really more of a deep dive of how their relationships are maturing or growing in different ways, or maybe are drifting apart from each other. So the characters, again, are awesome. We meet a couple new ones. But predominantly we have kind of the same characters we had before, maybe just a larger cast. Darrow, again, can't sing his praises enough. Severo, as I said in one of those clips, Severo, he is one of my new favorite characters. I think that his character is necessary for this series. What I mean is he brings a little bit of comic relief. He brings a little bit of levity to situations and circumstances that helps kind of pull back from some of the tension. Pierce Brown also uses him to kind of slow the pace down every once in a while, which is good because otherwise, like the first book, this would be foot on the gas and never let up. And so this allows us to kind of breathe a little bit. And his character in particular, him and Roke, I think is how you pronounce his name, they tend to give you that break in between intensity and that break in between tension constantly. The tension and the intensity is still there. It's just served up a little bit different. It's less of like a physical intensity, or it's less of physical strain, and it's a little more of intellectual strain or intellectual intensity. And so I think the characters, because we're not having to reintroduce everybody, Pierce Brown is doing such a great job of being able to show you not only who they are, but how they're thinking and their thought processes, which allow us as the reader to kind of start to figure them out a little bit like Darrow is doing along with him. And so the characters are great. Again, the plot is fantastic. And let me just say, this scene, the Iron Rain scene, that's a memorable one. So that was one of the coolest scenes I've read in a book, whether it be sci-fi, fantasy, or anything outside of that. It's one of the coolest scenes I've ever read. And so this is going to be a scene that definitely sticks with me. Now you could see the setup a little bit early on, but maybe not to that scale. So that was really, really cool to see. Again, the characters are great. The plot is great. Setting, it's just grown. I actually expected more of this in book 1, whereas book 1 was more centralized on Mars alone. And so it's cool to see how we are actually beginning to peer into sort of the expanse of what's going on. I can't speak highly enough about how good this book is. So let's talk about the bad. Again, I don't really have much to say. The bad meaning stylistic choices, maybe some characters I didn't like, and not the ones that you're meant to not like, but maybe like characters that didn't work for me, or the prose or things like that. I thought all of it was fantastic. And so really, I don't have anything to say negative as far as preference when it comes to the writing style, the character choices, things like that. I'm very much invested. Now that brings us to the ugly. And what I mean by the ugly is what could be some sin that is steeped into the work that could keep a Christian from picking this up. And unfortunately, there is a little bit more in here. So the things that were in book 1 are intensified a little bit, not by much. I think the language is probably less severe in this book, but things like descriptive sexual content, it's more severe. Let me put it that way. So if you've read book 1, then it's really not severe at all in book 1. There's a passing, there's mentions of it going on in the background, but nothing explicit in nature. In this one, there was a particular piece of dialogue between Cassius and Darrow where Cassius is trying to egg Darrow on or be inflammatory towards him, and he uses Mustang as sort of that crux or that leverage point to get him to initiate combat with him. And so there's just a line in there that kind of made me go, I wish that wasn't in there. Again, I know why it was in there. I understand. Again, this is a personal preference. So, y'all don't start stoning me yet. But as a personal preference, I would say I think that Pierce Brown probably could have alluded to that without just being outright explicit. I mean, the people that are reading these books aren't stupid. So, we can figure out what he means. And Pierce Brown tends to do that quite a bit when he's explaining things like that. He just sort of mentions it indirectly, and the reader is aware of what's going on without him having to be explicit. So I do wish that maybe that line wasn't in there. Again, it's not that big of a deal to me. I could kind of glance over it and be like, okay, like I get it, but that's just not my thing. So I will say, just be aware of that. The other thing is the brutality in book 1 carries over into book 2. Okay. It's intensified. Now, again, what I mean by that is it's not grotesque. It's not perverse, in my opinion. But really, it's just descriptive, the descriptive brutality of war. So nothing that you didn't get in book 1. Let me put it that way. So if you've read book 1 and you're wondering about book 2, you're like, oh, what? Maybe I should or maybe I shouldn't. Like, what could hold me back from this? I would say you're going to get more of the same, with a caveat there that there is that one line between Cassius and Darrow that is just a little more descriptive. I still wouldn't say that this is R-rated. I would say maybe this is still like what you'll get out of a PG-13 movie. So just know that going into it. So that way, if you do pick it up, or that way, if you have read book 1 and you're thinking about picking up book 2, if you like book 1, you're going to like book 2. If you weren't crazy about some of those convictional things in book 1, you may not want to pick up book 2. And I'll just put it that way. Again, not trying to detract from the work or how much I enjoyed it, because I loved this book, and it's going to be very difficult for me not to go into book 3 because I've got a couple of buddy reads I've got to start. Because the end of this book, oh man, it's going to be one of those that I'm going to have to take a couple of days to recover from. Man, the end of this book is not just exceptional, but the only way I can describe this is like the end of Avengers Infinity War. But there's such a cliffhanger at the end of this book that makes me mad that I can't start book 3. Not quite yet. But also, I'm kind of glad that I can kind of I'm ramped up and ready to go to read book 3, which I fully intend on doing. So that leads me to the final question, which is, should a Christian read this, or would I recommend this to a Christian? Absolutely, depending on who it is. So I would not recommend this to everybody, but I absolutely would recommend this to any of you that love Troy, Gladiator, maybe some elements of 300. If you like those movies, you're going to love this series. If you're not crazy about those, about the violence, the battle scenes, some of the political espionage, and this probably isn't going to be the series for you. But just going into it, some of the content that's in there, it is brutal. It does go a little more descriptive into some of the more mature elements, but not so much that I think it would make someone uncomfortable, if that makes sense. So ultimately, I love this book. I plan on picking up book 3 as soon as I get done with my next book, which is going to be right here, which is By Blood, by Salt by J.L. Odom. I'm looking forward to picking that one up. But yeah, absolutely loved it. Again, really cool. Really cool dust jackets from Nerdy Inc. From what I saw, they're still 50% off on their website, so you can get them for $17 for the whole series. I recommend it if you like this series. So go check them out. So yeah, great series so far. I'm looking forward to book 3, and I plan on picking it up soon. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for the encouragement and the support through the comments and likes and things. Please make sure you share these videos to your Christian brothers and sisters that love to read. I would love to be a valuable resource to them so that they might spend their time, energy, and money maybe a little more wisely for things that don't displease the Lord. So again, thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate you all, and I will see you on the next one.